Awesome. All right. Good morning, everybody. Everybody doing all right? All right. If nobody said yes next to you, just lay hands on them and start releasing that. This is going to be great. It's funny because we walked in, I told Gina, I was like, at least we're going to get to enjoy air conditioning today. And I was wrong. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Not saying I didn't want you to come to church, but we just this month, we started having our home groups meet every week. So we have 8 home groups. Approximately, we have about 200 people that are missing every week now going into homes. So today we're missing close to 200 people. And so we thought if we take 200 people out, it will give us more room in here. And I was wrong. And this must mean that this is what the Lord wants. He wants us to detox through sweating. And I wish I could give you the promise that you'd lose weight doing this, but I've been doing it a long time. And I'm not saying I haven't lost weight. I might be 800 pounds if we didn't do this. I don't know, but I'm just telling you, if you're looking for this to be your workout, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But so thanks for coming today. And we don't ever do this, but this is your first time here, can you raise your hand? Just look around the room. Awesome. Thanks for coming today. It really is an honor to have, and we've wrestled this of going to multiple services and stuff, and we just don't feel that we're supposed to do that. And so when we built this building, we built it during COVID. So when we opened the doors, it was an open air venue so we could keep on having church anyways. And so we started doing that in this barn. And then as it got bigger and fuller, we started opening up the doors. And there's times where we have to open up all the doors and people sit outside. But I had a word given to me by a friend of mine who I would say is not a person that has ever used the phrase, I had a vision. This guy was like, bro, I just saw something, and he was like, it kind of freaked me out, but I'm gonna tell you what it was. And he said, I was standing outside this barn, and I started walking towards it, and all of a sudden, I saw people filling this all the way out to the lawn. And people were sitting out just because they wanted to be together, pursuing God together. And that doesn't mean our vision is that we have to have that. I think what it triggered to me is there are a lot of hungry people. They want real community, and they want to know God. And so I'm really encouraged that you showed up today. You're an answer to prayer. I think you're an answer to the vision of what God is doing in this house. And I'm really grateful you showed up today. So I also want to say thanks to Jeremy Weedman. Last week's service was so good. Thanks for carrying that. He did call me this week and said he was sorry for how he talked about our merch. And he basically said, I repent, because he kind of put it down a little bit, like some of the older pastors could never wear that. And so he told me he was sorry and actually wanted to now be the model for some of our merch. And so if we could put that picture up of Jeremy in some of our merch. So thank you for doing that for us. I really appreciate it. And next week, we have a couple of our older pastors who are going to be wearing some too. They've also asked to wear it. Actually, Jeremy did not ask to wear that. I think Esteban put that on him. So you never know what Esteban will put you in. So, but thanks for wearing that. I also want to just honor Pastor Steve and Kathy Gray are here. They're pastors in Kansas City. And I served under them for, probably 15 years at some of the most powerful revival services you can imagine. And just an incredible time, one of the best preachers I've ever heard, and really changed my life. And so I wanted to honor them today. It's an honor to have you in the room today. So, all right. We have been going month by month. We actually, for those of you who are new and maybe you haven't heard this yet, we actually release at the beginning of the year, and we just released the second part of a devotional. We're calling this the Year of Devotion. And so we have a book that we created, and it's got different things that people have written from our church, and it's kind of a guide to help you know where we're going through the year. So if you want one of those, they'll be out. They're free. We made them so you could take them home with you. They're great for devotional stuff at home to be able to dig in, because one of the things that I've realized is as we come into this place and we're bringing messages and we're talking about things, it's hard sometimes because, we typically listen to it and then we move on with life. And so it doesn't mean that messages aren't impacting. It just means that we're not typically the people who dig deeper into things. And I want to encourage this house, don't just come in and listen to something and either be challenged by it. You should always be challenged by it. If you walk in and you're like, I don't know if I agree with that. Well, that's fine. We didn't say it so you'll agree with it. If I'm in here just trying to preach to everyone's favorite thing, then we're not growing, we're not learning. So I'm going to challenge some concepts that you have, biblical concepts. Some of them, a lot of them are just birthed out of some traditions. And that's what Jesus encountered when he talked to the religious. His biggest frustration with them was like, you're a people who hold on your traditions, but you let go of the commands of God. And some of us in this room don't realize how much we've been trained. I talked one time, I was listening to a comedian, I think it was Jeff Foxworthy, and he said, I was laying in bed, and he said, my wife said, I'm hot. He said, I got up and turned the fan on halfway back to the bed, and he goes, I wasn't hot. He's like, she's got me trained. He said, she just said she was hot, and I jumped up and took care of it. And he said, next day I could hear her on the phone with her mom. She called her mom. She's like, Mom, she's like, you be so proud of me. I said I was hot. And he jumped up and turned on the fan. And she said, honey, I'm so proud I'd tell your dad, but I said I was hungry, and he went and got me something to eat. Like, we've been trained in church sometimes by things that we just have a natural response to. Then anything opposite of it, we start to fight, but we don't ask, is that truth? And maybe I've learned some things that aren't necessarily truth. And there's some things that we're gonna have to battle together, but I'm gonna ask you to dig into it. Don't just walk away here frustrated and not actually dig into what we're saying, because you gotta start searching out and saying like, actually, I wonder if there's some truth to this. He opened up the Bible, he's reading the Bible, and if it challenges some of my precepts, some of the things that I believe, like that's okay. You should be willing to be challenged, because this isn't about just right and wrong. This is about us expanding the revelation of Jesus in our lives. And I want to expand the revelation of Jesus in our lives. I want the church to be what the church has been called to be. I want us to walk in strength. I want us to walk in power and authority. And the truth is, even today, as we're singing songs about miracles, some of you grew up in church where they told you miracles aren't for today. And it's tough, because then as soon as something like that comes out, you start fighting in service, and you got this thing in your head, you start thinking like, well, now I don't know if I can go to this church because they believe in signs and wonders, and I think that died with the apostles, and I can't find that anywhere in scripture. Like, that's a pretty important thing, that this is gonna die with the apostles, and Jesus doesn't say it one time. Jesus doesn't say, go heal the sick, raise the dead, proclaim the kingdom of God is here, but only do it until the last apostle dies. The truth is, in the New Testament, it says there's a fivefold ministry. He gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be teachers, evangelists. And as he's giving this fivefold ministry, he says this is to actually equip the body to maturity. I know some of you, we're not to full maturity yet. I'm just telling you, until you're to full maturity, we're gonna have the fivefold ministry, right? We're not fully mature in the things of God. We're growing in the things of God, which means apostles are still important for today. The prophetic ministry is still important today. But somehow religion got in, and what it did was it didn't see something it wanted in timing, so it created a theology to not have to deal with it. And listen, you know why most people in here will never pray for healing? You'll never maybe see healing? It's because you just don't do it. It's a lot easier to change a theology that it doesn't happen than it is to actually fight for something, to believe for something. So we have entire movements who have created theologies where you don't have to give. They did that, why? Because it's easier to not have to give. It's easier to not have to serve. It's easier to not have to love your brother. It's easier to not have to love your enemy, but it's in the Bible. And so you gotta make a decision, whose truth am I gonna believe? And am I gonna settle for what my traditions have taught me, or I'm gonna settle for what the Word of God has said? And there's some things that you need to dig into. And so we created a devotional where you can actually dig in with us. And this month, we've been talking about signs and wonders. And I knew when we walked into this month, there's going to be a conflict, because I've lived in Nashville long enough to know that as soon as you start pushing for it, people have seen abuses and they've seen problems and they've seen all this stuff. So what they do is they pull back and they don't want to believe for it. They haven't maybe seen it in their own situation and seen it in their lives. So it's easier for them to build a theology that maybe it doesn't happen. Then they start creating theology. Maybe God's doing this to me to teach me something. That's not in the Bible. The disciples start doing that to Jesus. They're like, hey, is this person sick because of their sin? And Jesus is like, no. How about because of their parents' sin? He's like, nope. And they're looking for an excuse, right? And Jesus says, this is the glory of God can be revealed. The glory of God wants to be revealed, and he doesn't reveal his glory by giving you sickness. That's never what he intended for you. He didn't create the garden and is like, hey, the way I'm gonna teach you in this garden is give you sickness. Sickness entered when we walked out of obedience with God. That's when it entered. So sickness is of the devil. Sickness is not of God. Am I just convincing you or something or what? What are we doing here? So today I kind of want to go through a story that might help us, and we're going to kind of try to break some barriers for some of you today. And some of you are going to get a little uncomfortable in this, and I'm good with that. All right? Let's go to chapter 5 of the book of Mark. This is actually verse 21. And I'm going to read through this whole story, then I'm going to go back and try to help us understand a little bit of this breakdown with Mark, how Mark is bringing this to us. But it says, Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. While he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just have faith. Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead, she's only asleep. The crowd laughed at him, but he made them all leave, and he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha koum, which means, little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone what had happened, and then he told them to give her something to eat. I love that part of the story too. But Jesus heals, he's like, let's eat. And you're like, this is amazing. Let's do this thing. This story is an amazing story, but as you start to break it down, it's interesting for me as I read the story. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, seen this, but the interesting thing, there's 2 stories mixed in here, right? And you have to really put yourself in, when you're reading this, I would read this several times and put yourself in the position of the different people in the story, okay? It's so important for you to do that because we lose perspective sometimes. And typically, we put ourselves in the position of wherever we're at in life, right? Most of us aren't putting ourselves in the position of Jesus in this. We're putting ourselves in a position a lot of times of one who's sick, maybe the woman who needs a touch from God. She's been dealing with it for a long time. Maybe we're the disciples who are kind of just on this journey together and we're seeing the miracles happen. Maybe maybe we feel like there's somebody in our family who's struggling and we're asking God, we're pleading on their behalf, would you answer this? So it's interesting as you go through this, if you'll put yourself in different positions, you'll see different things. And it's important for you to do that. And as I've done this, one of the things I realize about the way that Mark, if you study the book of Mark, I love the book of Mark. It's the shortest of all the Gospels. He does everything quick. So all of his language is like, and suddenly, and then quickly, and all of this stuff is like very fast moving. And he's just trying to get to the main point. He's not filling with tons of details. But he uses this technique called a sandwich technique. And I like that one too, you know? And it's interesting because with the sandwich technique, what Mark does, and he does it like 6 times, some would argue 9 times in the book of Mark, he uses this sandwich technique, and basically what he does is he starts a story, and then he interrupts it with another story, and then he finishes the first story. So it's ABA, if you know anything about writing. So they start a story, interrupt it with a story, and then finish the first story, and the middle story is the point. It's the main point of both stories, okay? So the middle part is the meat of the story. So what happens here, you have to realize, Jairus comes and he calls him, he's the synagogue leader. So this is a guy who actually has clout. This is a guy who's very important. You notice he doesn't have to push his way into Jesus. The woman does, but this guy doesn't. They make way for him to get to Jesus. And when he gets to Jesus, he is a desperate father. And the thing is like, you know this, and I was talking to somebody the other day. Listen, money does not fix everything. I know a lot of people that have a lot of money that don't have purpose and they're struggling. Or you've got all this money, and we talk about, then something happens in your family and there's a desperate moment. And listen, desperation hits all of us at times. And this is a desperate father who knows Jesus is the only answer for my daughter. And so Jairus is very intense when he comes up, and he was like, Jesus, would you come to my house and would you touch my daughter? He knows this is the answer. And I love Jesus. It doesn't say Jesus even says anything. It just says, and Jesus went with him. All right? So if you can imagine at this moment, everybody around recognizes this is important. If you're one of the disciples, you recognize we got to get Jesus to this daughter. She's dying. This is very important. So if you can imagine kind of making way, they're going through the crowds that are pressing in because they all want something from Jesus. So Jesus is walking. All these people are pressing around. The disciples are kind of pushing people, and Jairus is leading the way to his house. And all of a sudden, there's a break in the story, right? There's a woman that actually has to press through the crowd to get to Jesus. And she is so desperate, she's crawling just to touch his robe, because this is not a woman of stature. This is a person who's been put outside the camp because her bleeding has caused her to be outside of the camp. She's not allowed to be in with everybody. If she touches Jesus and they know about it, she's not just unclean, but Jesus becomes unclean. And so she's really secretly trying to get in, not to draw attention. She is so desperate, she knows they're not gonna make way for me, but I know for 12 years, it says she met with every doctor possible, so she went that route. She said, but she was even worse off. And there becomes this desperation inside of her that she knows, if I can just get to him and touch his robe, then I know I can be healed. And she crawls through the crowd, she's pushing, and she touches Jesus. And this is crazy in the story, because can you imagine being in a hurry? We're pushing Jesus along. We're trying to get to the daughter because it's a very desperate situation. This woman with the issue of blood reaches in, touches Jesus, and instantly is healed. For me, I'm thinking like, that's a cool story. Jesus should still keep on hurrying because this woman is already healed. But Jesus feels something leave him. This is how powerful this is. A woman reaches out and touches him, and Jesus feels healing leave his body. You got to think about that for a second, because there are many, many people pushing in to touch Jesus. And this is so important in the story because Jesus stops and he goes, "Who just touched me?" And the disciples are like, "Bruh," you know? No, hey, I don't think he said bruh. Bruh. He said, "Everybody's touching you. Like, you just stopped suddenly. There's a huge crowd around. Jesus just stops. Everybody bumps into him, and he's like, 'Who just touched me?' You know? And they said, everybody just touched you." And he goes, "No, This is so important. No, someone just touched me with faith. This is important because this means you can bump into Jesus and not get anything from him. You don't think those other people wanted something? But there's something happening here where this woman recognizes you're the source of life, not just the source of me feeling better. This is it for me. I've tried everything else, and it's hard sometimes because I feel like people come to church because they want to get around Jesus because it's almost like they'll catch something like they catch a cold. Like, I'm hoping to get something good out of this, so I come to church, but they didn't look at Jesus as a source of life. They looked to him as a good addition to make my life a little easier. And it's hard because if you don't look at the story that way, you're gonna get stuck in the middle of it, and you're asking God for things, but you're kind of just bumping into him, not looking at him as the source of life, complete source of life. You're looking at him as a good addition to your life, and then you're gonna go back to just living your life after this. And here he is, Jesus stops. And I can't even imagine what it's like in this moment for Jairus, because Jesus stops and he goes, "Who just touched me?" And Jairus is like, "Who cares? Like, who cares just touch you? My daughter is dying." And at this point, Jesus turns around and starts having a conversation. And he's like, "Hey, stand up." And if it's me, even as a disciple, I'm like, "Hey, Jesus, like, let's go. Like, there's a very important thing here that you said you would get to, that you said you were gonna go and intervene, and all of a sudden somebody else interrupted the story." And it's hard in this because some of you recognize, I need Jesus to show up in a situation, and you feel like there's a pause moment and you're getting frustrated with Jesus and you're putting Jesus on a time clock. It's like now God has to be on a calendar. He has to be on a clock. And you can realize in this moment though, the desperation of Jairus saying, "Come on." And he looks at this woman and he says, like he's proud of her. And he says, "Your faith has made you whole." And he's trying to draw a line here in a story to recognize faith is a movement. Faith isn't just a thought process. Faith pushes in. Faith pushes through a crowd. It's not afraid. It's not concerned about what it looks like. And Jesus is trying to teach even Jairus something here, because if there's faith in the middle of this, maybe there's faith that's going to be needed at the end of this. And it's so crazy because in this moment, there's an urgency of Jairus. There's an interruption of the woman who says, "If I can just touch him." And now there's a test of faith for Jairus in the middle of this. It's tough because Jesus looks at the woman with the issue of blood, and he doesn't just restore her body, he restores her identity. He calls her daughter. And it's hard in here because some of you, the biggest wrestle isn't with your illness, it's with your identity. And Jesus doesn't just restore one piece of her, Jesus restores the whole of her. That's why he had to stop. He didn't have to stop to heal her, she's already healed. But it's hard because the fight isn't just to get your life a little bit better, the fight is to get you re-identified with the King and help you recognize, I'm not a daughter, but you're a daughter, you know, I'm a son. When I went through my battle, you know, with even religion and stuff, the enemy was trying to identify me with a sick, dead religion. So even when I did encounter revival for the first time, I actually rejected it. I actually fought it. I actually called revival demonic, because it was outside of the realm of my understanding and it was outside of the realm of my control. And it's hard because in this, what happened then, when I dismissed that, I actually wasn't just dismissing revival, I was defending a system that destroyed my family. I was defending a system that was tearing my family apart. And I wouldn't have said like, "No, I want that system to live." But by rejecting the system that could heal, I actually stepped over here living in a system that was destructive, had no life, had no power, which is what Timothy talks about. He's like, in the last days, they have a form of godliness but deny the power. And in this wrestle, God wasn't trying for me to just pick up a better church service. God was trying to re-identify me as a son. And to be honest, I had so disconnected from it, I was acting as an orphan. I wasn't walking in the strength and power of God. I wasn't walking in the calling of God. And the first wrestle for me was like, in this, if I say this is right, then in this, I have to basically say for many years I've been living in what's wrong. But when he turns around to the woman, a healing had come, and he could have just kept walking because she got what she needed, but she didn't get what she needed. What she needed wasn't just healing. What she needed was an adoption back into the community of faith to say, you are a daughter. And whatever they've said about you, because it would have been easy for them to say, oh, you're unclean, now Jesus is unclean, and now he's got to go outside the camp, you're still outside the camp. And in this, he says, nope, I re-identify them and I pull them back into the fold. He's not just trying to heal your body, he's trying to activate the kingdom of God in you and re-identify you as a person of the kingdom. Because if you're a person of the kingdom, you just don't have kingdom things happening to you. You get to now be a participant in kingdom things. If this was just about her healing, he would have kept on walking and never even turned around. She got what she needed. Good for her. She's feeling better. The problem is, as signs and wonders start to invade this place, one of the things you're going to have to be careful for is not just letting this thing be about us just feeling better. This isn't about us just feeling better. That's the benefit of the kingdom of God being enacted in our lives. But many people just want to feel better, but they don't walk in a different identity afterwards. That's why it always comes to them, but doesn't always come through them. And Jesus is trying to make a statement here that I'm not going to just stop, let all these good things flow from me and not stop and recognize the purpose of it is to re-identify you as a daughter. I think it's really interesting. As soon as Jesus says daughter to her, all of a sudden the voices come back and they tell Jairus, your daughter is dead. Isn't it interesting? As you're journeying through this, some of you have been believing for something for so long, and it can be frustrating for you sometimes because in it, like, last week, somebody's healed in the middle of a service, right? A meniscus tear. And I got a video of her jogging. I don't know if she's in here today, but I got a video of her jogging, And she's like, my healed knee feels better than my other knee, And it's awesome to watch God move, but some of you could be sitting here thinking like, okay, like here I am. I've been fighting for this. I've been believing for this for all these years. And just randomly some person gets healed in the middle of a service. Good for them. Good for them, Have you ever been in a service where you're just like, financially, you're like, man, we've been in this spot. We're like, we're going to have to cut back. We're going to have to figure out what we're going to eat for the next week. We're going to do this. And then somebody in a service gets a financial testimony. They're like, God just showed up and gave me $30,000. And you're like, good for you. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God, come on, let's give it praise. You're like, golf clap. Like, I'm going to get involved, but not too deeply here because I've got some wounds here now, But it's hard for us because in the middle of it, sometimes the enemy wants to push a button and he wants to overplay his hand and he wants to say, you know what? That thing you've been believing for, you've been dealing with so long, you know what? In the middle of him stopping blessing somebody else, it died. Too late. And you start giving up on it and you start looking at it. You start realizing like, you know what? Never mind. And some of you have just settled with the fact that it's dead or that I'm going to die, that this is just going to be the way it is. And you realize in this, Jesus looks at him. Jesus doesn't even flinch. He looks at Jairus. This is so beautiful. He looks at Jairus after them coming and saying, your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. It's hard because I felt that. I feel like hope just got buried. Like the window closed, it's over. But Jesus looks at him, doesn't even flinch. He looks straight into Jairus' eyes and he says, do not be afraid. Only believe. That right there is tough for us sometimes. As we're coming into here, some of you who have been waiting, you get so sick of us coming in here saying, don't be afraid, only believe. And you're like, shut up, But in this, it's so important because sometimes the greatest battle of faith is not believing for healing, but it's believing after the bad news. It's believing after something destructive happens. But you have to recognize this is not just Jesus revealing that he is the God over sickness. This is the healing. This is the part where Jesus reveals he is also over death. He says, she's not dead, she's only sleeping, and they start to laugh at him. And the very first thing he does is he removes the mockers. He gets them out of the room. And I think it's important in this setting to recognize I don't want to be one of those, right? I don't want to be one of those who actually just mock it, maybe because I haven't seen it. I want to be somebody who actually believes. And Jesus walks in and he takes those closest, right? Those who need him to show up. It's easy to mock something when it's not a need of yours. In this setting, it's hard sometimes because people need financial breakthrough, but if you don't need it, you don't feel it. If you don't need healing, it's easy to say during a time when maybe we're praying for healing, it's easy for you to dismiss it and say like, can we just get this over with? But when you're the one who needs something, right? It's easier to have that desperation in that. So what Jesus does is he removes all the ones who have no need for him. That's what he does. He removes those who basically are in there saying like, they're coming into agreement with death. They're coming into agreement with finality of this. And Jesus is like, I get the final word. Who's gonna stand in agreement that I get the final word? And the mom, the dad, and the 3 disciples are the ones that he chose to walk in with him. And it's powerful because he looks at her and he says, little girl, I say to you. He doesn't go in and curse death. He doesn't go in and try to fight darkness. He walks in and he turns on the light. This is not about you striving for your healing. This is not about you having to have this internal striving and battle. This is about recognizing we get to walk with the one who is the light. And in this, it's important for us to recognize, he says, little girl, I say to you, get up. And in that moment, breathing is restored. Life floods back into her body and hope is reborn. So what this sandwich thing teaches us is the miracle is in the middle. Why did Mark write it this way? Why sandwich the healing inside Jairus' story? Because the miracle in the middle is the key to the miracle at the end. The woman's faith during the delay teaches Jairus to have faith after the delay. Did you hear that? This is so important for us because it's not just about you, it's about people you're gonna walk with. You have to realize we can have faith during the delay, but we also have to have faith after the delay. Her healing proves that Jesus is not bound by clocks and he's not bound by calendars. She had been struggling with this for 12 years. The child was 12 years old. There's no accident that this woman had gotten to live her life, but for 12 of it, it was a pure hell for her. And here's a 12-year-old little girl who lost her life. And Jesus says, there's no time limit to this. There's no clock to this and no calendar to this. And then he removes the mockers. It's important for us to recognize the interruption was not in the way, it was the way. Today, I want us to take a couple things in consideration, then we're gonna pray. Number one, don't despise divine interruptions. The miracle you think is slowing God down may be the message he's using to build your faith. Number two, delays are not denials. You prayed for healing, but maybe God's writing a resurrection. Number three, keep faith in the middle. The woman pressed through the crowd, Jairus pressed through the noise. What will you press through? Some of you, this is the hard part, is like, I know in this room, some of you have lost the energy to press. That's why we're here. We're here because I feel like in this room, there's gonna be some people that are gonna be like the friends who lowered their friend down through the roof And sometimes when you don't have your own strength, that's why it's important to have community. I was talking to my friend Jared. He has a ministry called Tiny But Mighty, and they went through, they had a preemie, at 28 weeks. And tough, right? They're in the hospital. They have a good friend base and community, but they started saying, like, how do people do this with nobody? How do they do this without a community of faith? How do they do this without friends? And so he created a ministry called Tiny But Mighty, and they're helping those who've had preemie babies, and they're going in and they're walking with them. They give one of Chuck Hammett's blankets to every one of the families. So then you start seeing other people surround and start gathering and saying, like, you don't have to do this alone. And sometimes in those moments, in the delay, you need a friend to walk alongside of you and to stand with you, just like the disciples walked in with Jesus, mom and dad are in with Jesus, and we want to partner faith. So I don't want you to have to do this alone, but it's important for us that you have to keep pushing through. The last one is you have to remove the mockers. Sometimes unbelief has to leave the room before resurrection can enter. I wanted to talk about that, and then I'm going to close with this, and then we're going to pray. As we're walking this out as HopeUC Nashville and some of the things that God has actually asked us to do and believe for signs and wonders, we've had prophetic words believing that this is going to increase in this place. We're already seeing pictures of it. It's important for you as you're journeying this. Some of you it's easy for you to put yourself in the position of the woman that's been dealing with a sickness for a long period of time. Some of you, it's easier for you to put yourself in the position of Jairus, where you're actually journeying this out. And you have somebody you're connected to, or there's something you're connected to you need to see a breakthrough for, and you're standing, fighting for them. Some of you are like the disciples. I feel like a lot of us, when we're not in that position, we're kind of like the disciples. We're walking this journey out with Jesus. But I think you also need to put yourself into the Jesus category, in the sense of Jesus took his disciples and he says, now I need you to be me. And one of the things that I'm the most concerned about in this community as we journey this ahead is that some of you have a great calling on your life, and there's a destination that you know you're supposed to head to. It's almost like Jesus with Jairus, and he knows, I'm going to heal that girl. But it's difficult when you get so focused in on that, you miss the woman with the issue of blood sitting right beside you. And some of you don't like the interruptions of things that are happening in your life while you're headed to a destination. I'm not even saying it's a bad destination. But some of you have ministry things in mind, but God is wanting to teach you some things along the way. And in the middle of it, you get frustrated because I'm dealing with all these situations in here, but God is causing you to grow and to learn and to have faith for something else that you are called to. I'm not even saying that ministry is a bad thing. I'm not even saying that destination is a bad thing. I'm not saying that business thing that God has blessed you with and called you to is a bad thing. But I'm saying on that journey, there are interruptions in the middle of it that God is asking you, are you willing to stop for a minute and re-identify somebody, or are you so focused on yourself and where you're headed to that you miss people in the middle? Gina and I were we were on vacation, we were at this beach, and it was just her and I. We're out floating in the ocean. She knows what I'm gonna tell. Her and I are floating in the ocean. You think you're unapproachable in the ocean, right? It's just the two of you. And all of a sudden, this couple starts floating up close to us. And I was like, shoot. This guy's drunk. He's definitely drunk. And he's like, hey, guys. And I was like, hey. And he gets to us first, and he starts telling us, he's like, yeah, we come down here all the time. I'm a family therapist, and I work with families and all this stuff. And I was like, cool, man. And then his wife floats up. She goes, I'm his wife. And he goes, my third wife. And she goes, and soon to be no longer your third wife, you know? And I was like, 3 wives as a family therapist is interesting. And then he starts telling us how his kids hate him. They don't come there, they don't spend time with him, they don't want to do anything with him, and all this kind of stuff. Here's the hard part, right? This guy somehow has a heart to become a family therapist. He goes to counseling, he goes all this stuff to become a family therapist. But on the journey to help everybody else, he lost his own home. It was so important to get to this other destination to help all these people that in the middle of it, he stopped looking in his kids' eyes. He stopped looking in his wife's eyes. And I'm not saying that all the situations were good, all this kind of stuff, but I'm telling you, it's an amazing story for us to recognize, yeah, maybe it's not this, maybe it's not my family, they're doing okay. But some of you are so focused on this destination of some kind of big ministry that you have a calling for that you miss the people that are sitting right next to you that you're supposed to help. And you think someday I'm gonna do it. It's like those people who are like, man, if I could just win the lottery, I'm gonna help a bunch of people financially. It's like, you've never given anything. You've never given $1 and you think you're gonna give $1 billion? You're crazy. You've already proven you don't do anything with what you already have. You think you're gonna be a big ministry someday and you don't pray for the people next to you? When you walk out of this building, here's one of my biggest concerns is we think the only way for people to get healed is to walk into this room. Why would they have to only walk into this room? I'm not saying it won't happen in this room. I'm saying, why would they only have to walk into this room when you walk out of this room? Now, if you were in here all the time and never anywhere else, I could say like, well, yeah, it's hard for it to spread with no people to spread it. But you're the carriers. And what big ministry things, what big business things, what big family things are you looking to do that you can't take time for the people you're encountering every single day? And here's Jesus on a pretty important mission to go heal a little girl, and it can start to look heartless that you're not continuing on that journey, and you're already stopping for a woman who's already healed. Now you're having a conversation. Jesus, if you would have hurried up, she never would have died. Jesus, if you just hurry up, I'm gonna get to where I need to be. I'm gonna get to do what you called me to do. And I'm not even saying that's wrong, but I'm saying Jesus is not on a time clock like you are, and he's looking to develop some things in you, and you're so interested to get to all these big ministry things, you're not becoming the minister of life. You're not becoming the one who functions in life. This love is supposed to pour through you every day, not when you walk into this room. This is not the ultimate goal. Sunday services. Are you crazy? This is so limiting. If this is your only stage, you're so limited. This city is your stage. God's walking you into business situations. He's walking you into education situations. Some of you are going to walk out of this room. You're a teacher this week. God bless you. Thank you, God, for teachers that are in this room. I just want to pray over you right now. Dear Lord, because when you walk in, you might be the only true mother and father of the faith they ever see in a room. You might be the only voice of hope they ever see in a room as an educator. I'm not talking about you getting up preaching a sermon. You are the sermon. The way that you talk with them, the way that you love them, the way that you process life with them, the way they see you react in hard situations, and they go, I want to be that person. There's opportunities every single day, and my concern is we walk right by the people who are reaching out to get a touch from God, and we keep on journeying ahead because we think there's something else to get to. I know some of you need a touch from God in this room, and we're gonna pray for that, I believe for that. But some of you are those, listen, some of you are those who are not needing anything right now, but the truth is you're also not necessarily becoming anything right now. And I said yesterday, this is hard sometimes because it's like, man, this was a really great message up until this point. You know, it's like, this feels so heavy. And I felt the Lord say, no, chains are heavy. This isn't a heavy message, this is freedom. Why? Because it unlocks you to be who you're called to be. It causes you to open up your eyes and look around. When somebody's walking beside you and they start doing something where you're like, oh man, I feel God telling me to take care of them. I feel God telling me to pay for that bill. I feel God telling me to, like little basic things, and we shut it off or we argue it. I don't know if that's really God. Yeah, Satan's really gonna tell you to do good things. Satan's gonna tell you, go pay for that person's meal. You know, like, I'm pretty sure God would even be like, I didn't say it, but that was pretty awesome. You know, like you did a good thing. That, you know why? Because you're taking on the mind of Christ. I didn't even have to tell you, because now you just start enact the things that I've called you to be and the things that I've called you to do. And so this is how we're gonna end. I'm gonna have the worship team come up, and I'm gonna ask all of you to stand up. We got lunch to go to. We got all kinds of things to head to, which I also think is godly. But right now, the woman with the issue of blood might be sitting next to you. Jairus, who has a daughter struggling, might be standing next to you. And today, you might be that person with a need. You might be that person who needs somebody to stand with you. And in this service, we've got a prayer tent out here where we're going to be going and praying, but we're not going to do that yet. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the next 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask you, introverts hate this part. But if you're desperate, you don't. There's a lot of people in here that would love to just believe with you and pray for you, and I'm going to ask you to take the next 5 minutes. We're going to end with a song called I Speak Jesus. We're going to declare it over each other. But would you take the next 5 minutes? Would you turn around one direction? If you all turn around, nobody's going to talk to each other. So you got to figure this out. You guys are smart. You can do this. And I'm going to ask you to take a break, right? This is in the middle of the journey. And I know some of you just came to come to church, but this is church. Church is community. It's life. And I'm going to ask you to turn around. I'm going to ask you to find somebody, nobody by themselves. If you attend here and you're one of our prayer people, I'm going to ask you maybe to walk around, make sure nobody's by themselves. Nobody in this room should be by themselves. It's the thing that hurts me the most when I see people alone. But I'm going to ask you to turn, and I'm going to ask you just to ask the question, is there anything I can believe for you for? And I know some of you don't know what to say and don't know how to pray, and that's okay, because we're just going to pray together, sing a song together. But I'm going to ask you for a couple minutes, I'm going to ask you all to become the prayer team in this room. And it could become very uncomfortable, and I understand that. But I can't apologize for it. Because the picture I saw today is healing is actually going to come by you being willing to stop for just a minute, look around the room. And some of you, when you pray for somebody else, you're going to receive your healing because you became what you needed for somebody else. And so in here, I know some of you are the ones like, I need something, I know. But become the thing that you need to somebody else. And surely goodness and mercy will follow me. It pursues you. It overwhelms you. So before we do that, Jesus, I just release a prayer of faith over this room. Let every wall come down. First thing he tells Jairus, do not be afraid. And fear now is starting to rise up in some because I've been through this before. I don't want to do this. But what's the worst that can happen right now, right? So Jesus, every fear has to bow in your presence. And we just release now prayers of faith and healing in this room. I speak to every single body. We're going to see cancer die. We're going to see bones restored. We're going to see bodies made whole. We're going to see minds made new. And I release that now in the name of Jesus. Now would you turn around and find somebody, just take the next few minutes. Find somebody and ask, is there anything I can believe for you with?